At their seats, the clerk has opened the roll. You may record your presence. Please rise and give your attention to our guest chaplain, Representative Schlingenziepen, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Representative Oropesa.
In the Gospel of John in chapter 3, verses 19 through 21, Jesus says, "The light has come into the world, and people loved darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. For all who do evil hate the light and do not come to the light, so that their deeds may not be exposed. But those who do what is true come to the light, so that it may be clearly seen that their deeds have been done in God." Pray with me, please. O source and goal of all creation, how often we human beings seek ends under the cover of darkness. When we do, it is because we know that the ends we pursue can not and will not stand up when seen by the light of day. This morning I pray for us, for those of us gathered in this place because we were elected to represent those who sent us here, because we were elected to work on behalf of those who sent us here, and for their and our well-being. Some of us may think we work for those who contribute the most to our campaign coffers and further our political or other ambitions, just certain that we have sufficient means to spin and communicate our dark intentions in ways our constituents will fail to see. But your light, O God, shines in the darkness, and the darkness does not comprehend it, which is to say that the darkness neither gets it, nor when it does, has the ability to snuff out your light. Where our hearts are lost in darkness, O God, turn us toward your light, that we may be honest, transparent, and concerned for the well-being of all your people, indeed, of all your creatures everywhere. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Has every member had the opportunity to record their presence? The clerk will close the roll and record the attendance. The Speaker recognizes Representative Owens and Anderson on a point of personal privilege.
AC, maybe kind of stand there. You go. Perfect. All right, members of the Kansas House, Representative from Harvey County and I are pleased to present with you the Harvey County Stand Youth Organization. So what is STAND, you ask? STAND empowers teens to impact their school and community in a positive way by reducing substance use and promoting health, hope, and connection.
STAND's unique prevention model is rooted in prevention science and builds in protective factors that buffer kids from risk. Young people involved with STAND know that they are valuable contributors to social change and are empowered to lean into their strengths to impact the world around them. School and community leaders who work with the teens model healthy beliefs and clear standards, providing support as they harness young people's social influence. STAND leaders have the capacity to impact thousands through their positive leadership, prevention education, and student-led and design projects that meet community needs.
STAND has grown to over 195 students in 6 school districts. In 2022 alone, STAND leaders impacted peers and communities with over 19,962 messages and dedicated over 1,800 hours of service to substance use prevention and mental health promotion in their communities. Joining us today are Program Prevention Coordinator Benjamin Meyer. We have STAND board leaders Hudson Ferralis of Heston, Hunter Diller of Heston, Macy Wolgamuth of Heston, Natalie Sanchez of Newton, Maxwell Massam of Newton, Scott Recheck of Sedgwick, Josie Cochran of Sedgwick, Kylie Inlow of Sedgwick, and Esperanza Solis of Peabody.
These youth, along with many members in the gallery, have received many awards for their work with their peers. And here are a few in the gallery as well.
Oh.
In 2019, STAND received the Kansas Prevention Education Award for their impact. In 2020, STAND was tweeted by First Lady Melania Trump as a part of her Be Best campaign for their leadership and work. In 2022, an individual STAND leader received the Youth Leaders in Kansas Outstanding Youth Leader Award. STAND received the Wichita Business Journal's Healthcare Heroes Award. They also received the Kansas Hospital Association's Distinguished Healthcare Advocate Award. In 2023, STAND received the Governor's Council on Fitness Organizational Health Champion Award, honorable mention. And please join me in recognizing these incredible youth and their powerful message of hope and healing.
Thank you, Rob.
Mr. Speaker, I ask that my words be spread across the journal.
Without objection, so ordered. Introduction of bills and concurrent resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill number 2447 by the Committee on Federal and State Affairs, an act concerning cities and counties prohibiting the banning of products or services otherwise permitted under state law. House Bill number 2448 by the Committee on Appropriations, an act concerning the legislature relating to compensation, salary, and retirement benefits of members thereof, creating the Legislative Compensation Commission, prescribing powers and duties of the commission, authorizing the commission to set rates of compensation for members of the legislature, establishing procedures for review and possible rejection of such rates of compensation by the legislature.
House Bill 2225 is withdrawn from the Committee of the Whole and referred to the Committee on Energy and Utilities. Speaker recognizes Majority Leader Croft for a motion to resolve into the Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for the purpose of considering those items under the heading of General Orders.
You've all heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion carries. The Speaker appoints Representative Howe to chair the Committee of the Whole.
Good morning. The first item of business is HB 2344. For the purpose of carrying HB 2344, the chair recognizes Representative Bourgeon.
Chair. There were no committee amendments. All right, House Bill 2344 comes to you from the Commerce Committee at the request of the Department of Commerce. It does three things. It expands the Advisory Council on Travel and Tourism from 17 members to 20 members, and those members are from the National Independent Venue Association, the Kansas Museums Association, and Kansas Sampler Foundation. And those appointees are required to be Kansas residents, worth noting. The second thing it does is it changes the grant makeup. So previously it was 75% public match with 25% private. The bill changes it to a 50-50 match. And then lastly, there's some cleanup language that addresses the department moving from Wildlife and Parks to the Department of Commerce. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Probst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Carrie did a fine job explaining this bill, and I'd encourage your support. Thank you.
Are there any other members that would wish or desire to speak to the bill? If there is no further discussion, Representative Bourgeon, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that when the body rises to report it, report House Bill 2344 favorable for passage.
You have heard the motion by Representative Bourgeon to report House Bill 2344 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The ayes do have it. The motion passes. For the purpose of carrying HB 2144, the chair recognizes Representative Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, House Bill 2144 deals with the rule against perpetuities. Now, don't let me lose you here, because this is pretty impressive stuff. It authorizes modifications of a non-charitable irrevocable trust to provide that the rule against perpetuities is inapplicable. So what is the rule against perpetuities, you might add? Well, the original intent of the rule against perpetuities was to prevent property interests from being tied up for generations after a grantor's death. However, almost every state has revoked or modified the common law rule against perpetuities, including all of the surrounding states in Missouri, Nebraska, Colorado, and Oklahoma. The rule is no longer the protection it once was. Currently, if Kansan would like to have their trust interests last longer, they would just go across the border to do their trust business elsewhere. Adopting House Bill 2144 will keep that business in Kansas. The second proposed change is simply a tweak to the definition of a resident trust. With that, Mr. Chair, I will stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Osman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to ask the carrier of the bill any questions. As I explained to my caucus, the rule against perpetuities is one that we spend 3 weeks on in law school and is the bane of existence of any bar exam because it is so complex and so crazy that no one really wants to deal with it. So hope you've all learned exactly what the rule against perpetuities are over the last 2 minutes. I think that it's generally a good bill, and I would support it. And frankly, if for whatever reason this ends up being a bad bill, we're literally not going to know about it for the entirety of our lifetime. So that's really the best that you can do in the state legislature. So I would urge your support on this bill. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? If there is no further discussion, Representative Owens, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that when the body rises and reports House Bill 2144 favorably for passage into perpetuity. Thank you.
You have heard the motion by Representative Owens to report House Bill 2144 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. The next item of business is House Bill 2083. For the purpose of carrying House Bill 2083, the chair recognizes Representative Underhill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were amendments, so I move to adopt the committee report.
You have heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion passes and the committee report is adopted.
I rise before the body today to present House Bill 2083. 2083, as amended, would prohibit cities from imposing fees and requirements on vacant properties. Cities would still be allowed to blight properties and encourage property owners to maintain their properties as current ordinances may state. But what this bill does is it prevents communities from imposing a fee just for being vacant. We had some proponents to include the different groups. We had opponents that were a couple of the municipalities, but after the amendments, more and more people, the proponents and opponents came together and we worked on it together. So with that, I will stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the explanation that the carrier of the bill gave. I really do appreciate that a compromise was attempted to be met and that the cities did work together with the realtors and other involved parties. And I think that's something we can all think about, that trying to make a compromise is a good thing. I could say in my own city, we have moved to a reluctant neutral. So that's not support, it's a reluctant neutral. And the league still opposes, as they feel this is still an infringement on local control. So if local control is your guiding principle, this is probably a no. But if you want to, go with neutral or trying to be with a compromise, then this is a yes. So to my people, I will say, vote your district.
Is there further discussion? If there is no further discussion, Representative Underhill, the chair recognizes Representative Berquist.
I believe the previous representative was pretty clear about the good collaboration over finding middle ground on this. The bringer of the bill that presented it to the committee to work with the other parties that were opponents and proponents to come up with a good compromise. I think it meets the needs of the League of Municipalities, the Association of Counties, the bankers, and the realtors. And it doesn't prevent anyone from getting their property noticed when it has too tall a grass or something breaking down. But it does give the opportunity for a list, but not a fine or a fee to go against those who are the intermediary of a property that's being dispositioned that happens to be vacant at the time. I encourage your passage of this HB 2083. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? If there is no further discussion, Representative Underhill, you may close.
My community is also a reluctant neutral. But Mr. Speaker, I move that when the body rises to report, that they report House Bill 2083 favorably for passage.
You have heard the motion by Representative Underhill to report House Bill 2083 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. It is unclear if the ayes or nays have it. The chair is in doubt. We'll call a division vote if the clerk would open the roll. As every member had an opportunity to vote, the clerk will close the roll and take the tally. 74 having voted in favor and 41 voting against, the motion passes. The next item of business is House Bill 2077. For the purposes of carrying House Bill 2077, the chair recognizes Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were committee amendments. I move the adoption of the committee report.
You have heard the motion. All in favor of adopting the committee report signify by saying aye. Opposed? No. The motion passes and the committee report is adopted. Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House Bill 2077 is almost identical to last year's House Bill 2548, which passed out of here 116-3. The Senate did not take it up, so we're going to send it to them again and see if they take it up this year. The bill will implement a risk analysis model for IT projects, and it will also make sure that JCIT, Joint Information and Technology Committee, has a voice in IT projects before they go out for RFP. It changes also changes some language to identify where CTOs are supposed to report to, and it gives the executive branch CTO the ability to implement cybersecurity standards and changes to state agencies and agency heads for cybersecurity. We also added in a provision that makes it so that entities that connect to the state have to report any sort of cybersecurity incident so that we can protect our state computer system. Right now, we have 253 million in active projects, 149 million in approved projects, and 84 million projects that are in the planning stages. So this is very important that we have this oversight, and with that, I will stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, body, and I have an amendment.
Representative, the amendment appears long. Would you like to explain it?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So As the previous representative explained, this bill comes to us as part of the recommendations from the Joint Committee of Information Technology, JCIT. And we did make some modifications. As we were working the bill this year, we did hear some concerns about the ks.gov, how they are connected. And so the amendment amends how the ks.gov will report.
Representative Featherston, I would ask that the committee or the committee of the whole keep your conversations to a minimum, so we out of courtesy to the speaker at the well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know this is a very exciting topic. So anyway, the amendment basically changes how ks.gov will report their cybersecurity incidents. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Does any member wish to speak to the amendment? The chair recognizes Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill's been worked on by a very bipartisan, and this is a friendly amendment that we saw afterwards that we need to put on. So I hope we will adopt this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? If there is no further discussion, Representative Curtis, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I encourage your positive vote for this amendment as it will solve the issue that Casey just brought to us. So with that, I close and move my amendment.
You have heard the motion by Representative Curtis to amend. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. Does any other member desire to speak to the bill? If there's no further discussion, Representative Hoffman, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee rises to report, we report House Bill 2077 favorable for passage as amended.
You have heard the motion by Representative Hoffman to report House Bill 2077 as amended favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. The next item of business is House Concurrent Resolution 5005. For the purpose of carrying HCR 5005, the chair recognizes Representative Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Body, today I bring you HCR 5005. It is a concurrent resolution making application to the Congress of the United States for a limited national convention with an exclusive purpose of proposing an amendment to the Constitution establishing term limits for members of Congress. So this is a single subject application for a convention of states. Our framers of our Constitution knew that the document they created would probably need to be amended, and the amendment provision that they provided was Article 5. So today we're discussing, and we're bringing before you HCR 5005, which is an application that 34 would be needed to call a convention, and then to be ratified, it would be 38. And it passed the Federal and State Affairs Committee. And with that, I will stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? The chair recognizes Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that the carrier covered the major points of this resolution. I do have some concerns and disagreements. This does attempt to have a limited scope to our suggestion to call this Article 5 convention, but it does not seem that it's likely that it could remain limited to term limits. I think that there are ways that these can be opened up more broadly to other issues. I also have concerns about the delegation and how that process is selected. This has some suggestive whereas language that our delegates need to be members of the state legislature. There's a bill over in the Senate to address selection of delegates. So I really have concerns that the representatives selected could potentially have no members of the minority party, as well as it could lack diversity, which we all know that the original Constitution did lack diversity and members coming up with those laws. So I think if we're going to open this up and put the Constitution out there, that we should have fair representation if we're going to do that. So today I would ask you all to join me in opposition to this. And frankly, I think there are a lot better things that we can do to fight for our constituents here in Kansas. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there further discussion? The chair recognizes Representative Miller. Representative Vic Miller.
Practice. Life is good today. I rise in strong support of this resolution, assuming we fix it. Would the carrier of the resolution yield to a question, please? Rule 2901 of the House Rules, and this came up last year. We fixed it then. I hope we can fix it again. Among other things, it requires that the be it resolved clause have certain language, which this resolution does not, unless you can point to me where it does.
I don't believe it's in the resolution, but if you're referring to these House rules, our House rules say that 2/3 of the members elected are needed to apply for a convention.
Not only does it say that that's required, it says that that shall be included in the be it resolved clause. Resolving shall have a resolving clause which reads, be it resolved, da, 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 da. And it does not. You would concede that? I'm just trying to fix it. I'll offer an amendment, Mr. Chair.
The amendment appears short. The clerk will read.
Page 2, line 20, by striking House Representatives and inserting Legislature. Also in line 20, after the comma, by inserting 2/3 of the members elected to the House of Representatives and 2/3 of the members elected to.
You may proceed to explain your amendment.
Yes, this merely adds language to the resolution that is required by our House rules, Rule 2901, which prescribes that certain language be included in a be it resolved clause as it relates to resolutions calling for amendments to for calling for the Convention of States. That's all it does. Fixes it. I'm so excited about this resolution. I don't want to see anything get in the way of its failure. I'd stand for questions.
Does any member wish to speak to the amendment? The chair recognizes Representative Humphries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you bringing this amendment, and body, we would be in favor of it. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak to the amendment? If there's no further discussion, Representative Miller, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move my amendment.
You have heard the motion by Representative Miller to amend. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The amendment passes.
Do I still have the floor, Mr. Chair?
You may proceed.
A question again for the carrier, if she would. You gave a brief summary in your opening remarks, but one thing I didn't hear you mention was the participation of conferees in the committee. Would you review that for the body, please?
Are you asking who were the proponents and who are the opponents?
That's another way to put the question. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the proponents were, sorry, the organization of U.S. term limits were the proponents. I don't have that information. Oh, you go ahead, please.
That was not an incorrect answer, but let me augment what that means. There were 3 proponents. There were 2 very lovely people from Alabama who I had the opportunity to share an evening with last summer in Wichita at the Conference of State Governments. Wonderful people who, for a living, lobby for the passage of term limits. And there was a 3rd fellow who, by his testimony, indicates he too is a full-time employee of the U.S. term limits. So, as you can see, there is overwhelming public support for this resolution. I urge its adoption. I urge its adoption because, and by the way, I have no real problem with term limits. One good way around it's just to run for the Senate and come back and run for the House, and you never run into that consecutive term issue. It was said earlier, ironically, there was a person down here on a bill previously that said, you won't know whether this is a bad piece of legislation because you won't be alive when we finally discover that. And I sort of feel that way about this one, in that I won't be alive when there is ever a convention of states called by the U.S. Congress, which I suspect, regardless of what happens today, tomorrow, the next several years in the assorted states, will ever come to be. But I sure wish, if it does happen, I am alive to see it. Because a Lollapalooza, unlike any we've ever seen, I believe is what we would witness. Yes, this resolution says term limits. But the Constitution doesn't say that Congress is limited to what it is that's requested. It simply says, oh, my pocket Constitution's in my pocket. Article 5, upon the necessary applications, Congress shall call a convention for proposing amendments. Nothing in there about amendments requested, amendments petitioned for. Doesn't use the word singular amendment, it says amendments. I don't know about you, but there's a lot of proposals that I would like to see amended to the U.S. Constitution. And I hope that if one is called and I'm alive, I might be able to participate as a delegate. Which brings me to a question: if the carrier of the bill, the resolution, would yield. How are the delegates to a convention of states selected?
So the House resolution is silent on that, as is Article 5. Even though, well, go ahead.
So may I interpret your answer to be you don't know?
It's silent on it, so, right, there's no, it hasn't, yes.
I've told many people many times it's not an embarrassing thing to say you don't know when you don't know. I want to hear you say the magic. I don't know. She doesn't know. It's not her fault. Nobody knows. Because, pocket, did I put that in? Article 5 says, nary a word about how these delegates are selected. Who they are, how many there are, where they come from. Now, we had a former candidate for U.S. president appear last year when we had, it was last year or was it the year before? The last term when we had a hearing on this, there was a good-looking young man. I got my picture taken with him. Very proud of it. He once ran for, I think he ran for president a couple times. But he attempted to tell the federal and state committee, when asked about delegates, that there would be 2 from every state. Unlike the carrier of the resolution, he was omniscient. Somehow he knew it was 2 per state, even though that source cannot be found anywhere. Now, based on representative government, as I know it, and I think most of us are familiar with it, it's based on population, representative government. So I would suspect that one of the choices that Congress may choose if they call a convention of states is by population. Consequently, the Californias and the New Yorks of the world will have significant control over what emanates from any such convention. And that excites me, actually. That really excites me. I've seen some of the great things they do in other states, and I think that some of their ideas to amending the Constitution might be more consistent with some of the ideas that I hold. Such as a woman's right to bodily autonomy. We need to address that more so than a year ago when we spoke about this very resolution. We weren't sure then, excuse me. We weren't sure then that a woman's right to bodily autonomy would be protected as it was in Roe v. Wade. And now we know that it wasn't. And those of us who support a woman's right to decide her health, decisions about her health, they are in need of protection. And if Congress won't do that, perhaps a convention of states will recognize the great need for such an amendment. That in itself would be a cause to attend a convention of states and participate in the excitement of making such an amendment to the Constitution. This term limits thing, it doesn't really excite me. Would the carrier of the resolution yield to a question? Don't drift away. I like you.
Really?
Yes, I love you.
Thank you.
We should love each other. What is the number of the legislation in this body that addresses term limits for Kansas legislators?
And sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure.
Not understanding what you're asking.
Our resolution in front of us addresses term limits for U.S. representatives and senators.
Yeah.
What legislation do we have in front of us that addresses the issue of term limits for state legislators?
I don't know of any. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, ma'am. See, it didn't hurt to say I don't know. I didn't know myself the answer to that question until I looked it up. There actually is one, introduced by a handful of our colleagues. It's HCR 5007. And it would limit, via a constitutional amendment to the state constitution, our service to 4 consecutive terms in the House, 2 consecutive terms in the Senate. While we're on the subject of term limits, I raise this subject because I asked the rhetorical question, why aren't we just as concerned about limiting ourselves than playing hypocrite and saying somebody else should have their term limited? My congratulations to the handful of representatives. I think there were 5 of them that had the courage to put their name on both these resolutions, both limiting ourselves and limiting our U.S. congressmen and senators. It's interesting because back in 2019, a very brave young man serving his 4th term in the legislature introduced a resolution, 5003, which he proposed that we put in the Constitution, the Kansas Constitution, a limit of 6 terms for any one of us to serve in the House. Now serving his 6th term, I'm anxious to see what happens in the next election cycle. Would the carrier yield to a question, please? What's the purpose of limiting terms of our U.S. representatives? What's the motivation, if you would put it in your own words?
Thank you. So the vast majority of Americans think term limits is a good idea in surveys. The other reason is because it gives new people opportunity. Term limits encourage women to run. When there is turnover, then we have new people come in, and the American public agrees with that. That would be part of the reason. And then, if I may, the other reason is we've seen certain congressmen for decades hold positions, not with others not having that opportunity. And the swamp, we all know, is deepened when people stay in the same position for decades. And so it's good to have new people, new things. And there's no, we can debate the time limit. But new people turning over and giving other people the opportunity, especially women, I feel like it's a great idea.
Well, that's interesting, since some of our longest-serving House members in this very chamber are women. And frankly, I would debate anyone who wants to say they are some of the finest assets we have intellectually in this body. I got to thinking about who our longest-serving members were. And I would hate to be here today without the presence of those people because of what they do bring to the table. What I was looking for in my last question of the carrier was for her to relate some of the language that is in the resolution in front of us. I call your attention to lines 30 through 33. When it says that passage of this legislation will establish term limits for members of Congress to prevent the accumulation of inordinate power in members with longevity who are able to amass high amounts of funds for reelection. I happen to agree that the amassing of high amounts of funds for reelection is a hazard to people running again and again. So I call your attention back to HCR 5007 referenced before and ask why we're not holding hearings and giving our attention to that resolution. A review of campaign finance records review that one particular member of this body has an outstanding balance. Mind you, the election's not till 2 Novembers from now, but they're sitting on $165,791.62. Now, it would be against the rules for me to say who that is, so I won't mention any names. But I can tell you it's a person in this body that has a certain degree of power as described in the resolution in front of us. And not to pick on just one person, we have a person on our side of the aisle that's sitting on over $92,000. So my question is, if that's one of the primary purposes of debating and passing today's resolution, why aren't we giving more attention to ourselves? And the answer is because it's easy to be hypocritical. This may be the first time I've ever seen a bit of hypocrisy in this chamber, but I call it to your attention. Please join me in voting yes for this resolution so we can have something to look forward to the rest of our lives. I can't wait for the day, and I hope Congress figures out a way to include me in the process. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Is there further discussion? The chair recognizes Representative Will Carpenter.
Thank you, colleagues. I appreciate the previous representative up here. Bottom line is, we've all gotten emails, hundreds of them from both sides. You can produce everybody against it and for it. But the bottom line is, there are representatives that have been in the Senate longer than I am old. Well, not quite. Close. Within 15 years. How about that? And we can sit here and debate this all day long about whether it's appropriate, whether it's not appropriate or anything like that. But I think we need to address those issues. Here's a senator, 51 years, 49 years, 48, 47, 37, 41. Here's some Congress folks in here, 52 years, 48 years, 41 years. If we don't think that's a problem, then we do have a problem. So anyway, I urge your support on this bill.
Is there further discussion? The chair recognizes Representative Hauser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That caught me off guard. I didn't know it was up on deck so fast. I come up here, you know why I'm here. I've been in this body for going on 11 years now. And I've been against this movement since I've been here. You got to know why I'm here. I don't like the federal government either. I don't like the way it's run. What encouraged me to run for my office now was the 10th Amendment and the powers that the states have under the Constitution. And I was asked to help move a resolution, oh, good Lord, 13, 14 years ago. And my representative at that time didn't want to help move it, and it was a 10th Amendment resolution. And so I said, okay, I'm going to take your job. And I did eventually. That's how I got this seat, and that's why I'm here today. Term limits, that can be good or bad. I've had a debate. You can have a good, solid person that's right for the job, or you can have a bad one that's there for all the wrong reasons, just to make money for themselves, better themselves. I'm either way on that one. I will say my freshman term up here, I sat right over here and I co-sponsored I don't remember if it was a bill or a resolution, but it was with the colorfully dressed representative, ex-representative from Tyro, Kansas. And we brought that up here. His term limits, it was 12 years total. You could be like, if you were on the House side, you were going to be able to serve six terms, you'd be in for 12 years. And if you're on the Senate side, it'd be the same. It'd been 3 terms. You know how badly that failed in here? It was pathetic. And yet here we're asking to do there what we won't do to ourselves. And I got to say, the minority leader, when he was up here speaking, he took all my thunder and all my notes, and you know, he gets it. You guys ought to understand, what is it that the guy with the weird mustache, why doesn't he like convention of states? I mean, I vote conservative. I'm in the top 90% every year. I just don't agree with the movement because I see a danger. I'm not saying it can happen, but I don't want to be up here in the one that says, I told you so. That's where I don't want to be. In a committee, I'm on Fed and State. A comment was made during, I don't remember if it was this resolution or the last resolution, but the comment was made, we got to do something now. I mean, we can't wait. Oh, it was the physical restraint bill. That's which one was. We have to do something now. Well, as the previous speaker mentioned, the cows will come home before Congress ever calls one of these conventions. I'm just telling you, so you're not looking at a quick fix on any COS issue. So I'm not going to waste a lot of your time. You know where I'm at. I can't say any more than the previous speaker had for the reasons to not vote for this. Matter of fact, he says, and I believe him, I take him at his word when he says he'd like to see this happen. I believe him. And there are no rules. Congress will write the rules, not the states. Congress will decide who goes, not the states. There's a bill over in the Senate that's going to try to address that issue, but it's going to be a moot point even if it passes. We're not going to do it. Scared you, didn't I? This is just an envelope for another bill. I don't have an amendment on this. What I'm going to do is ask you to join me in denying them the constitutional majority tomorrow on the final action and see how long it takes them. And you'll see the reason why they changed House Rule 2701. And I addressed that when we were doing House rules. If you don't remember what I said, don't give them the majority tomorrow on final action, and we'll see how long it takes them to sue the state of Kansas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there further discussion? The chair recognizes Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in opposition to HCR 5005. You've just heard the words of my friend from Cherokee, and he's absolutely correct. You heard the words of the minority leader. He's also absolutely correct. There is no provision in the United States Constitution for limiting the scope of a constitutional convention. You're going to see a convention that is dominated by people from the coasts. That's where the population centers are. The majority of the delegates at the convention will end up being from places like California and New York. And yes, they will defend a woman's right to bodily autonomy. The right to abortion will be guaranteed in the United States if we have a constitutional convention. And the second thing that will happen is the Second Amendment will not be worth the paper that it's written on because they will repeal it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there further discussion? If there's no further discussion, Representative Humphreys, you may close. Oh, he took it all.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Just a few things that we need to go over. First of all, we're not talking about this body, and talking about what we're going to do, term limits in Congress, doesn't mean we can't talk about this body. We can. It's not one or the other. We could do both. So this is term limits specifically with Congress. There were 36 sponsors of this House resolution, and I'm really glad that the representative from Topeka supports it. I appreciate that. Again, there's overwhelming support in the United States for term limits, and this call to a convention is very specific. It is about term limits. And you might say, it's going to be runaway, but our brilliant forefathers that wrote the Constitution, their brilliant minds, put in safeguards, which will be to even happen, 2/3 of the states must call the convention, and to ratify, 3/4 of the states must call the convention. And I would like to say that you might not like it, but the fact is Article 5 exists in our Constitution. The founding fathers did make a way to amend the Constitution by the states. And they didn't put all the specifics in. They didn't say you're going to have this many conferees, you're going to do this, every state's going to do that. They didn't do that. If they needed to, I think they would have. The document that they left us with has proven for over 2 centuries to be firm and to be solid and to be helpful to us. So they didn't need to put those details in, but it does exist, and they did make a way for this to happen. So with that, Mr. Chair, when the body rises, I move that when the committee rises and reports, it reports HCR 5005 favorably for passage.
As amended?
As amended. As amended.
You have heard the motion by Representative Humphreys to report HCR 5005 favorably as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, nay. A division has been called for. The clerk will open the roll and you may vote. Seeing 15 hands, a roll call is in order. Has every member had an opportunity to vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member wish to change his or her vote? 66 having voted in favor and 51 voting against, the motion passes. The clerk will record the vote. This concludes our general orders. The chair recognizes the majority leader.
Mr. Chair, I move we rise and report.
You have heard the motion to rise and report. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, no. The motion passes.
The clerk will read the committee report.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee of the Whole recommends House Bills 2344 and 2144 be passed. House Bills 2083 and substitute for House Bill 2077 be passed as amended. House Concurrent Resolution 5005 be adopted as amended.
The Speaker recognizes Representative Howe for an adoption of the committee report.
I move the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Committee report is adopted. Reports of standing committees, the clerk will read.
Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development recommends House Bill 2388 be amended. The bill be passed as amended. Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development recommends House Bill 2275 as recommended to be passed by the Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development as reported in the Journal of the House on February 15th, be passed. Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development recommends House Bill 2400 be amended and the bill passed as amended. Committee on Federal and State Affairs recommends House Bill 2422 be passed.
Is there any objection to returning to that order of business, introduction of bills and concurrent resolutions? Seeing none, the clerk will read.
House Bill number 2449 by the Committee on Appropriations, an act concerning boards and commissions relating to the per diem compensation of members of such boards and commissions.
Announcements. Representative Will Carpenter will replace Representative Barb Wassinger on the House Committee on Taxation on March 7th. The appointment will expire at the end of the day on March 7th. Representative Hoheisel will replace Representative Wassinger on the House Committee on Higher Education Budget on March 7th. The appointment will expire at the end of the day. Representative Pat Proctor will replace Representative Dave Beeler on the House Committee on Health and Human Services on March 7th. The appointment will expire at the end of the day. Further announcements, the Speaker recognizes Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Wyandotte County Delegation Lunch today, room 152 South, and our sponsor is Health Forward.
Speaker recognizes Representative Stogstill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Democrats will have agenda tomorrow morning at 8:30 and 152 South, 8:30. Thank you.
Speaker recognizes Representative Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock, we'll continue our Bible study on Nehemiah. 7 o'clock, it'll be room 241. There'll be coffee, maybe some snacks. See you there, 241. Tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock.
Speaker recognizes Representative Luis Ruiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today, if you've noticed, we have a lot of company today, and a lot of new young people walking around our halls. Today's also Mental Health Awareness Day for the House. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S., and the suicide death rate in Kansas is significantly higher than the national average. The Mental Health America 2023 report ranks Kansas 51st amongst all the states and Washington, D.C. Organizations like Kansas Mental Health Coalition and American Foundation for Suicide Prevention have long histories of advocating in our state to improve outcomes for all Kansans. We can all work together to learn suicide risks and warning signs and encourage those who struggle to seek help. While there is still work to do, recent investments I just want a little bit better attention for this suicide I'm getting from our mental health. Today, suicide prevention and mental health advocates from organizations statewide are visiting our state capitol. These volunteer advocates are here to support laws and policies related to mental health and suicide prevention. They will be visiting your offices today to share their personal stories about how suicide and mental health have impacted their lives. Whether that is living with a mental health condition, losing a loved one to suicide, or supporting a loved one through a suicidal crisis, and how they are using what they have learned through those experiences to bring hope to other families in our state. I'd like to invite you all to visit them on the first and second floor rotunda and to join them in support of making suicide prevention and access to mental health care a priority in the years to come. The people of Kansas deserve it. And as we all know, mental health issues hit 1 in 4 of us, 1 in 5. And sadly, we had a member of our own colleague several years back who suffered from a mental health condition. And our prayers are with that gentleman today. And so thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Speaker recognizes Susan Ruiz.
Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem. As part of Mental Health Advocacy Day, we also have another group. They're called the Y-Link Group, and they come to us from different parts of the state. You will see them up in the gallery wearing green T-shirts. There's a few of them left up there. These young people are recognized as youth leaders in Kansas, and Y-Link offers opportunities for young adults to develop community awareness and youth leadership skills. They focus on behavioral health, physical health, and substance use prevention. Please give them some words of encouragement when you see them on the first floor. Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem.
Speaker recognizes Representative Garber.
Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem. Congressional Prayer Caucus, room 187 North, immediately upon adjournment. Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem.
Speaker recognizes Representative Rajas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No rural caucus today. No rural caucus. We'll be back next week. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker recognizes Representative Epley.
Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem. The Chairwoman of Health and Human Services wanted me to announce to the body that in addition to our agenda today, we will be hearing possible action on bills previously heard. So just want you to be aware of that. Thank you very much.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, the Speaker recognizes the Majority Leader for a motion to adjourn.
Republicans will calendar tomorrow morning at 8:30. Mr. Speaker, I move the House adjourn until Wednesday, March 8th at 11 a.m.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.